Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, we'd like to seek the blessings of Shri Shri Radha Krishna and Krishna Balaram, Shri Shri Gonitai, Shri Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj, so that we continue with having an overview of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto. And today we look at chapter 75 and wanted to seek the good wishes of the devotees present, so that without the blessings of the devotees, actually nothing can happen. So with your blessings, it'd be very important that you provide those blessings so that we continue with the chapter 75. So this is a very interesting verse. Okay, Sabriditova Vatano Rusha Jwalam Nishkramya Tusnim Prayayau Gaja Payam Haheti Sabda Sumahana Bhut Satam Ajata Shatru Vimana Iva Bhave Bhavat Bhuvatu Snim Bhagavan Bhuvo Bharam Jamu Jihirsu Brahmati Smaya Drasha. So this is I think the final verse of this chapter. Humiliated and burning with anger, Duryodhana turned his face down, left without uttering a word, and went back to Hastinapur. The saintly persons present loudly cried out, "Alas, alas!" And King Yudhishthira was somewhat saddened. But the Supreme Lord, whose mere glance has bewildered Duryodhana, remained silent, for his intention was to remove the burden of the earth. So the Lord is very, very difficult to understand. You can see here Yudhishthira Maharaj and the saintly kings responded in one way, but Krishna responded in a completely different way. So he's very mysterious. So let's see what gave rise to his reaction like that. Okay. So this chapter is called Duryodhana Humiliated. And it describes the glorious conclusion of the Rajasuya sacrifice and how Prince Duryodhana was humiliated in Yudhishthira's palace. Yudhishthira's relatives assist him preparing for the Rajasuya sacrifice. Maharaj Parikshit wondered why, when all the assembled kings, sages, and demigods were delighted to see the wonderful festivities of Rajasuya sacrifice, Duryodhana was a sole exception, because that's what Sukadeva Goswami ended the chapter with yesterday, that he was not happy. So Maharaj Parikshit was wondering why, what was the matter? At the time of Maharaj Yudhishthira's Rajasuya sacrifice, many of his relatives and well-wishers endeavored to please him by performing the necessary services. So this is Sukadeva Goswami answering Parikshit Maharaj's inquiry. So he says, Bhim supervised the kitchen. Not sure if we can really trust Bhim with the kitchen. He probably eat most of the prashadam that was made. Only joking, actually. Duryodhana looked after the treasury. This is quite extraordinary. Duryodhana was in charge of the treasury. Sahadev respectfully greeted the arriving guests. Nakul procured the needed items to serve the guests. Arjun attended the respectable elders. And Krishna, this is extraordinary, he washed everyone's feet. So bewildering. The actions of the Supreme Lord are so bewildering. He washed everybody's feet. And Draupadi, she served everybody, served them prashadam. And generous Kern, he gave out the gifts. That was his natural inclination. He was always very generous soul. So when the sacrifice was complete, the king adorned the priests, the exalted members of the assembly, and his own relatives with fragrant sandalwood paste, flower garlands, and fine clothing. Then they all went to the banks of the Yamuna to perform the ritual bathing that marks the end of the sponsor's period of initiation for the sacrifice. Marks the end of the sponsor's period of initiation for the sacrifice. Before the final bathing, there was much sporting in the river among the male and female participants. Everybody was joyful. Surrounded by guards, King Yudhishthira's queens came out of their chariot to see the fun, just as the demigods' wives appeared in the sky in celestial airplanes. As maternal cousins and intimate friends sprinkled the queens with liquids, the ladies' faces bloomed with shy smiles, enhancing the queen's splendid beauty, and their faces shining with bashful laughter. In their excitement, the flowers fell from their loosened braids. By these charming pastimes, they agitated those with contaminated consciousness. So after the sacrifice, basically, the yagya, the sacrifice is finished, and then everybody's very joyful. They're bathing and in the Yamuna. It's like the final offering, the finale, if you like, of the occasion. Yudhishthira requested closest friends to remain for some time. He had so many guests, and suddenly if everybody departed, he would have been so lonely. Everybody would have been so lonely. After the priests had executed the final rituals, the king and the queen, Srimati Draupadi, bathed in the Yamuna. Then all those present who belonged to the order of the Varnashram bathed. So that's the Brahmins, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. Yudhishthira Maharaj put on new clothes, worshipped the learned Brahmins, his friends. He also worshipped his family and well-wishers, each in a particular manner suitable for them. And he offered them all various gifts. So generally after a yagya, after a sacrifice, you would thank everybody by giving them presents. Very, very nice tradition to uphold. The guests then departed for their homes, but King Yudhishthira was so anxious about his imminent separation from those who were dear to him that he compelled several of his relatives and closest friends, including Lord Krishna, to remain in Indraprastha a bit longer. So the Supreme Lord remained there, it says, for several months to please the king, after first sending Samba and the other Yadu heroes back to Dwarka. Thus King Yudhishthira, the son of Dharma, was at last relieved of his burning ambition. So his burning ambition, the Rajasuya festival, sacrifice. And he does it not for his own enhancement, but actually to serve the Lord. And he is so fortunate, the Lord is there, physically present, to be served. And he agrees to be served by his devotee. So this is a phenomenal combination of Bhakta and the Lord, pleasing each other. So he was at last relieved of his burning ambition, having, by the grace of Lord Krishna, successfully crossed the vast and formidable ocean of his desires. One day, Duryodhana, while observing the riches of King Yudhishthira's palace, felt greatly disturbed by the magnificence of both the Rajasuya sacrifice and its performer, the king. So this is the problem with envy. If we think envy is actually deep-rooted, because that is the original the original sin, that we were envious of God. So this is something that's very, very difficult for the soul to let go of, to think. If somebody is doing well, the souls, we generally want to bring that person down. If we can't do it in front of others, we do it within our mind. So we would say, oh yeah, but, he's very nice, but, this problem, that problem, this problem. So envy is something that I don't want to go as far as saying is natural to the soul. It's actually against the principle of the soul. The soul's main principle is to serve. Envy stops him from serving. But it's the original reason why we're here. So it's very tightly entwined with our nature, envy. So envy is something, how do we get rid of it? Following the orders of the guru, like yesterday or day before, or Monday, day before yesterday. Bhaktisiddhanta said, I only wish the greatest good for my worst enemy. See, if that sort of mentality we have, by the mercy of the guru, then envy won't be there, because even if we don't like somebody, if we hate somebody, if we a worst enemy, we want the best for him. So where's the place for envy? It's not there. So when we see others, when we see our neighbors with better cars or better something else, we want that for ourselves. When we see another devotee doing so nicely, we want to be recognized like that. This mood of envy kicks in, and we have to guard specifically against that. Every other vice, we can convert it into service to Krishna. The anger, we can use the anger for service of Krishna. Anger, lust, lusting for the Lord, greed, greed for serving the Lord. But envy is something that is is hard to dovetail towards the service of the Lord. So it's something that we have to guard against ourselves with the help of the Lord. So unfortunately, Duryodhana had the disease, envy. King Yudhishthir's royal palace had been constructed by Maya Danava, who had endowed it with many wonderful features and opulences. King Duryodhana burned with envy when he saw these riches. Now, Maya Danava, he was very, very clever. How he constructed the palace of Yudhishthir, which was the most extraordinary palace. Far, far better than anything in Hastinapur. Even just the palace was better than the whole of Hastinapur put together. So hence Duryodhana was feeling inadequate, because Hastinapur's opulence was nowhere near in comparison to just this one little palace. Not little, of course, it was huge. But just the palace in itself was better than Hastinapur, everything in Hastinapur. So one day, Yudhishthira was seated with Lord Krishna in his royal assembly hall, attended by his subordinates and family members. He was manifesting magnificence equal to that of Lord Indra. At that time, Duryodhana entered the hall in a fitful mood. So he was a little disturbed. Bewildered by the mystic craft of Maya Danava, Duryodhana mistook part of the solid floor for water and thus lifted his garment. So he was thinking, this is water. And he walked holding up his dhoti, but actually it was solid floor. But then he came across a floor which he was thinking is just a natural walk path, and he walked past it and he fell into some water. He mistook it for the solid floor. Now, when he fell in, Everybody started laughing. When Bhishma Sen, the ladies of the court in the royal palaces present, saw this, they began to laugh. Maharaj Yudhishthira was very sensitive. He knew the nature of Duryodhana, and he himself was extremely compassionate. He didn't like to see anybody humiliated. So he tried to stop them. No, why are you laughing? Don't laugh at our cousin, our relative. But Lord Krishna, he encouraged their laughter. And though thoroughly embarrassed, Duryodhana left the assembly in a fury and immediately departed for Hastinapur. So why did the Lord do that? Why did he encourage them to laugh? Because he wanted Duryodhana humiliated, because he wanted Duryodhana to effectively fight. Through the humiliation, he would become so angry that he would want to take over Yudhishthira's opulence, his Indraprasth. And in the long run, it would end up in a battle, in a war. And the Lord wanted that. He wanted the war in order to rid the earth from the disturbances by the unruly kings. So this was part of the Lord's original mission to come here, to reduce the burden on the earth of the Kshatriyas. So that's why he encouraged their laughter, in contrast to Yudhishthira's behavior. So very interesting how the Lord would go against etiquette, really. But he had a purpose behind that. So,
Haribol,
yes.
I just wanted to know, did this falling in the water, you got the picture there, happened second time? Because the first time, I think, did Draupadi say, Andeka, blind people's children are blind or something? Is this the same episode, or this is second
the same
time
episode? But,
okay.
But there is controversy here in the sense that Draupadi also apparently did not say that. It was one of her maids. But because a maid was standing right behind Draupadi, it seemed like Draupadi was saying that. And this is how Duryodhana took it. He took it that this is Draupadi saying this. So he made a vow at that time, I'm going to get you back. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
But you're right. This was the occasion. This was the occasion. He said,
thank you.
A blind, the son is as blind as the father, wasn't it? Something like that. Yeah.
In Hindi, andeka bachcha anda hi hota hai, or something like that.
Yeah. Thank you, Kumar. Yes, right. That's right. But yeah, actually, he was very cultured. Yes.
I think to make it dramatic, in the Mahabharata series that they made, they made it like that. Dialogue is either true or not, but in the actual Mahabharata series, he falls into one of these ponds, and Draupadi laughs, and Draupadi makes a comment, but whether that's in reality, did she say it or not? But then Duryodhana was very much attracted to Draupadi, even at the Swayamvar, where Arjun, had to shoot the fish with the arrow and all that. Obviously, Duryodhana was envious from that point as well anyway. So
correct.
He wanted to take revenge then afterwards. Yeah, Haribol.
Very true, very true. Yeah, I mean, I've read a few places where, the commentary was that Draupadi did not say these words. She did not laugh because she was also extremely cultured, because of Yudhishthir, Dharamraj, and his mood. So she also was in the similar sort of mood. So she was very grave as well. But
it just shows that when these pictures or films are made, they don't have proper knowledge, and they make a mockery out of it and give misinformation to people, and I think that's such a sad thing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. There's
I
so
would
much detail. Yes.
Yes, I
Additionally.
also, sort of agree with Kamakshi Mataji that, and I've already read your version as well, that it was not Draupadi who told it, because she was such a sort of like a sober lady.
Sober,
but
yeah.
Yeah, sober and sort of educated and would not do this. But as you said, the Mahabharata series mucked it all up. And the good point about that you explained about the envy, yes, I heard it elsewhere, that it's so deep rooted that envy, and I think envy and jealousy. I think jealousy is a little bit better than envy. Envy is not, isn't it? Because jealousy is not that deep rooted.
Yeah.
Deep rooted down to your bones, as they say.
Correct.
Other than envy is. Yeah.
Correct. Envy, you want to bring that person down,
Yes.
by any means.
Yes.
Jealousy is, oh, I wish I had that, But envy is, I'm going to bring that person down. And that, if we have that mood against anyone, we are going to stay in this world for a very long time. Because that is really goes against the grain, against the Lord's desires. So that's one thing we have to remove, as devotees, have to remove this hatred. Sometimes this hatred of others has to go. Otherwise, how are we going to get out of this world?
Yeah, but how is it difficult, isn't it? As you say, it's so deep ingrained. I think that's what is happening with these people around the world at the moment, all this terrorism and all this infighting, that the envy, I think, may be lying at the bottom line.
Root cause. Yeah, for sure. It's like what's happening, I don't name any countries or anything, but potentially the dispute going on in the Eastern European side. It's deeply rooted within envy, and it can have such terrible consequences.
But then some of them have ulterior motives behind it, isn't it? They're selfish, to sort of become overpowering or try to want to control, so that the other side is weak, and then they can do what they like.
Correct. Very true. Very true indeed. Anybody else? Any comments? Any questions? Otherwise, Madhusudan Prabhu would like to take us through the instructions.
Okay, Haribol. Hare Krishna. Wait a minute. Yeah, so in regards to this envy and Duryodhan, again, you heard of Jarasan, Sisupal, and now Duryodhan, and it's like, one after another. But it's clear from this chapter that Duryodhan was always very envious of the Pandavas and Krishna as well, So it's if you're envious of the Supreme Lord as well, that's why he never complied to any of the instructions given, Right. So Srila Prabhupada, I quite like this purport, at the end to that verse that you're reading. So you read that first verse, and then Prabhupada actually writes that when Duryodhan left in such an angry mood, everyone regretted the incident actually. And King Yudhishthir also became very sorry. But despite all these occurrences, Krishna was silent. He did not say anything against or in favor of the incident. So it appeared that Duryodhan had been put into illusion by the Supreme Lord, Supreme Will of Lord Krishna. And this was the beginning of the enmity between the two sects of the Kuru's dynasty. So this appeared to be part of Krishna's plan in his mission to decrease the burden of the world. So such envious and Duryodhana, I mean, clearly when Prabhupada said the world or the earth has to bear the burden of so much sin and so much envy and his personalities like Duryodhana and Ravan and Shishupal and all that. And then, as a result, there is so much atrocities, like, for example, at the moment, Brahmins are not respected. Then the cows are not respected. And as Krishna stands for Sanatana Dharma, a varnashram system, and and it's only the presence of pure devotees that decreases the burden of the earth, which is sinful. And at the moment, the biggest burden is obviously, cow killing, and that's on such a big scale. But we try, but this is how Krishna wants the burden to be decreased. So Bhumi also, is the way Bhumi hides away resources when she's burdened like that. So we think all gold and all that and jewels, diamonds were abundant, but the earth, also in retaliation, or rather Earth is Mother Earth is also a pure devotee of the Lord, and she's serving the Supreme Lord. And in her service, that's why one sadhu I was listening to is Vrindavan, and he was saying how, every morning we should pay respect to the earth and all this, and because we do so many horrible things, on the earth, we and pee and all sorts of things without any respect for the earth. So this is how Krishna lessens the burden. But pure devotees, that's why whenever we go to the dhams, where pure devotees, and in Vrindavan, especially if you go there, you'll find sadhus sitting with hardly anything, but they're so elevated, and it's those that create an atmosphere or the consciousness. I mean, Prabhupada coming to the West and distributing this, and so many people with Krishna consciousness has certainly made some sort of shift in the consciousness of mankind, so yeah, Haribol, Hare Krishna.
You're absolutely spot on. I remember one class given by Bhakti Rasayan Sagar Maharaj, after Prabhupada, what he did, he brought this real revolution. It wasn't just in Krishna consciousness, but if you'll see after his arrival, the growth of vegetarianism was humongous, especially in America and UK. And then this, how yoga has become so commonly known throughout the world. And this is to a huge extent credited to Prabhupada. It's not just Krishna consciousness he brought a revolution in many other ways as well. And it was very interesting what Bhakti Rasayan Sagar was saying, because I never thought about it from that. I've got the one-dimensional, that he brought Bhagavad Gita, but actually it was much, much wider than that. So very interesting how the sadhu can have such an impact, not just in one sphere, but all round, So
yeah, there was some research I came across a long time ago. It's a psychologist, he was retired, he went into spiritual life, obviously not quite Krishna conscious, but spirituality and all that. And he wrote quite a few books, but he actually devised kinesiology in his time. And then, through kinesiology and telling truth from lie and all that sort of thing, and lie detector tests, that's what he worked on as well. And then he developed what is called a map of consciousness, where he give grading like from 0 to 1,000, as to the consciousness. And he put animal consciousness down to about 40, 50, like that. And then some countries are much more higher in their consciousness, where there is education, fairness, law and order, and all that sort of thing. So he actually gave us sort of a map of consciousness, but he also includes our emotions within that. Sometimes we are stuck in grief, which is very, very low. Shame also. So, starting from like shame, if you look at a person who's in shame, his body language tells quite clearly that he is ashamed. And also a grief, they look down, and the body language tells so much. And then the body language of an angry person also. So from grief to shame to grief to envy to pride also, and gradually raises up all the way to anger, and then peace and love. So somebody who is actually affected with the emotions of love behaves totally different from someone who is angry. Body language is totally different. So he created a map of consciousness like that, and he actually put some of the dictators of the world, like Idi Amin, Saddam Hussein, lower than even a Komodo dragon. He said at least the dragon, Komodo dragon is killing just for its own food because he's hungry. But these dictators go beyond that. So some humans are not even above the level of animal consciousness. Although they might be acting like humans, but envy is certainly in there, which we have to try and rise above. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Very good.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so let's go to the prayers of Lord Nrsingadev so that we can continue to serve Radha and Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So tomorrow